Alright guys, so as you just heard, our famous VTC rattle from Honda's inability to create one that doesn't rattle on a 2.4 after 2008. So we'll be replacing the timing kit, doing a valve adjustment. So for this, we're going to have to get everything out of the way. Take the belt off, support the engine, take the engine mount off, the engine mount bracket, remove coils, covers, valve cover, hoses, anything attached to it, remove it off, time the engine, lock it with 2 locking pins on this side, and then we're going to be removing all the accessories, the VVT or the VCT actuator, which is right there, inspecting it. We're going to go remove the timing cover, also obviously we have to remove the harmonic balancer. So we're going to start at the bottom first, actually. Remove the wheel, remove the fender liner, and make sure we can get our harmonic balancer off before we disconnect the engine mount, because we're going to need the support. So we're going to get to that right now. Once you have the wheel removed, you're going to be removing this body cover here. And it's also underneath here. Just remove any... Actually, those 2 should be sufficient. And then we can get access to this area here. Okay, so we're going to do that now. Now that we got our cover out of the way and we just use a bungee cord, you can remove the whole cover, but we're just going to do it this way. So before you remove the serpentine belt, we're going to try to get this nut loose, because it's always a problem. So we're going to try with the electric gun and see how that goes. So the electric impact did not get it off. I'll attempt my air gun now and use a technique where I tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen. In worst case, we're going to have to do it by hand. So let's try that now. All right, so after a nightmare to get it off, I actually had to use a bar like this on the bolt and bump start it to get the bolt loose, because I could not get it off. Look, I even cracked the actual piece of this using the Honda tool, if you could believe it. So I don't recommend this. That's why I did not show it, because I do not recommend doing this to remove the crank pulley bolt. There are other ways, stronger guns to get it. Unfortunately, this was my only option. So the bolt is out. It is hot. It's on fire right now. I'm probably going to get a new crank pulley bolt. Look at that. And a new harmonic balancer, because I don't think that's acceptable to put back on, even though it is my car. So now we can continue. Now that the crank pulley bolt's loose, this is why you do not loosen the engine mount, because you need all the leverage and torque possible to get this bolt loose. So the next step now is we're going to remove the serpentine belt off the vehicle. So the first thing I'm going to get out of the way is just remove your coolant reservoir bottle out of the way. You want all the space possible. Just leave it over here. Not going to spill. It can stay there. You just want to grab... Actually, to make this whole thing easier, we're going to support the engine from underneath with a jack. That will allow me to remove the engine mount, and we'll have tons more room to get this crank pulley bolt out. I'm actually going to remove this right here, just because we have all this room here, so just give me a second. Alright, so I haven't even gotten to the serpentine belt. I actually took the inner fender liners out to remove any of this dirt that's stuck in here, because we are gifting this car. We don't want to send it out with like tons of shit in it. So took the inner fender liner out, took the bottom cover out so we can support the engine properly. We're draining the oil, we're putting a new filter on, then we're tightening the drain plug, and we gotta write down that we did not fill the oil, and then we can begin to take apart everything that we need to take apart, and starting with the serpentine belt, engine mounts, and then valve cover gasket, then the side pulley. So we're gonna keep going. We also cleaning up this side, getting rid of all the debris, because we're actually getting a new fender liner for this side, as it's been damaged for years. Go figure, when you finally give someone something, then you finally fix it, but you never do it for yourself. Okay, so cleaning everything up. Okay, so now I put a new filter on, tighten the drain plug. So now we can go up top and start removing everything. As we can see, the oil pan is supported with a block of wood and a jack. Okay, let's see if I can get a better shot of it. Alright, so this way you can control the engine going up and down. Once you loosen step one, we're going to loosen this torque mount, this one, and this one, and then we'll remove the actual engine mount bracket, and then we'll keep going. Now that we got our engine mount out, and the support brackets and the torque mount, we have tons of space to do this job. So the next thing we're going to do is remove the serpentine belt. Just pull this back, take the belt off. Just remember the routing. It's pretty easy. Crank pulley, AC, water pump, alternator, idler, tensioner. After we remove that, we're going to remove our engine bracket right here, which is part of our cover. So just remember where those bolts go, because they are part of the cover. So I'll show you what I rig up to take care of this issue, okay? So we're going to do that now. To remove this bracket, you really got to jack up the engine, and the engine's got to almost be on an angle so that the bolt here can remove out. So just keep that in mind. And now I'm going to just pull the pulley out by hand. VTC solenoid. We're going to unplug it. And then remove the bolt and pull it out. Then we have to remove valve cover gasket, coils, all this, peel the harness back, and then we'll be right back. Now that we got the valve cover off and bungee cord to hold this back, we've removed all the screws that are on the timing cover. But please go over it a bunch of times with your hands and make sure you're not missing any before you go and obviously put force on this cover to try to loosen it up. So just make sure all your screws are out. There's 3 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. The ones on that cover don't matter. And once you have that, you can pry on the cover from the top. So you get a pry bar and you pry on this edge here, or you pry lightly in here against the bolt. We're going to try that now. So I was forgetting one bolt that's right behind here. So there's a bolt right behind here, and then there's the one that holds the VTC at the bottom. So don't forget that one. And then we should be able to, with light force, not as much force as I was using, be able to pry this cover off. Let me look over it again. Now that we have our cover off, take a look, cover's off, pry it, and then pull it back against this wall and slide it up. And that is how you're going to install it when silicone's on. You're going to install it like that. Practice putting the cover on before you actually put the silicone on. So, right now we need to reinstall this bolt. And we're going to give it a little zap with a gun so it stays on, so that we can turn the motor. So there. So we'll probably just turn the motor over by hand now and line up our timing marks, and then we'll start cleaning the entire surface. We don't want any of this stuff ending up in the oil pan, so we're gonna be very careful about how we remove all this stuff. We're probably gonna jam something in here so that nothing falls in. So right now we're gonna turn the motor over, and we want to line up our timing marks, and I'll show you what that looks like. Before we waste our time lining up the timing marks, we have to loosen this bolt. So you do that by hand, 17 mil and the large ratchet, and then you get this is what it should look like. So you want to put this on here, you want to put your hand here, and you just counter. Okay, now the bolt's loose, you're okay. Now we can, it's loose, so we're okay. So now we can turn the motor over and line up the timing marks. So I'll try and show you guys what that looks like. All right, so we got arrows here. So we want all the arrows facing the top arrows, which are pointed right here. There's 2. So we want those arrows facing up, and then we want the 2 lines on the cam sprockets facing each other. So now I'll turn the engine over until we get to that point. We do have the spark plugs in, so we are fighting. But we're almost there. We don't need to worry too much. You can see our timing marks are almost lined up. And there we go. Okay, so our timing marks are lined up. You guys can see right there. There's one mark there, one mark there. So those 2 perfectly lined up. Our arrow here lines up with our arrow there. And same idea here. We have an arrow here, and it lines up with our dot right there. See, there's a dot on the top. You'll see it. It's right there. Okay, now we check the bottom. The engine was obviously already timed because it was running, so we know the timing's on. But now we have to check down here. Well, down here there's nothing to check. Okay, you see up there that arrow? There's an arrow up there. Well, a few. Okay, so if you guys look very carefully up there, you'll see a timing mark there, and that timing mark should line up with the timing mark just above it right there. So we're a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is time the engine at the top, and then we'll see how far off we are here. We know we're perfect here. Okay, and I'll show you over here. There's 2 holes on each of the camshafts down here, and you can slide pins through there or drill bits, and it locks the cams in place, and that's how you time the engine. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So as you can see, our pins are locked in too. So if they don't line up, you just put your wrench back on here, 15/16, and you rock it back and forth until the pin slides in. So now both our cams are locked. You can see right there, the lines lined up perfectly. They're perfect on the top. On both sides, there's a dot there, and it lines up with our lat line there. So now we just gotta check and make sure that this lines up. That arrow lines up with that arrow, and look, it lines up perfectly. I would say that I don't need to do anything. It's almost perfectly lined up. So now I want to count the teeth on the tensioner and see if the chain is really slack or not. So let's get you down there and you guys count the teeth. Let's zoom in. So I would count those as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teeth. I don't think that's that much. I don't think this chain is actually stretched out. I think our main issue is here. I don't think the tensioner failed, but we're still gonna replace everything, because once you go this deep, you gotta just get it all out of the way. So we're gonna begin to disassemble this. So you gotta take this off. Then you can loosen the tensioner right down there. There's 2 10 mils. That'll take the tensioner off, and I'll show you a trick to push the tensioner back in to remove it safely. Now that we've removed our tensioner from its position down here, you see we have this extra space. So what we're going to do is remove this guide, and then we'll remove the other guide, and we'll be able to remove the chain safely. Here's our tensioner with both the bolts in it. We're going to need to reuse that. See how I compress the tensioner? And then if you have a pin, you can put it in that hole there. There's our guides. Here are our guides. There's literally no damage on them. There's like nothing, almost no wear or hardware. Here's our chain. I'll measure it out with a new chain and compare it after. So the next step is, remember we had our VTC loosened already, so we can take the bolt out. And we can remove our VCT actuator out of the way. And everything's still hot right now, so don't lose these bolts. Okay, here's our VTC, which was replaced, I don't know, 7 years ago. And after a few years it started making noise again, so I don't know what's going on with Honda stuff, but it just doesn't last. These don't last. Let's see if the pin is locked. Yeah, they're locked right now. So technically right now it wouldn't rattle. So put this on the bench. Okay. So the only thing left to do now is clean the entire surface up. As you can see, I jammed the rag down in there. See the rag? So that when I start cleaning this surface out of all this stuff, scraping it all off and prepping the surface, it's all clean. So that's the next step. So pretty much this is your next job. All right, so the entire surface is clean. That's how it should look. Nice and clean all the way around the bottom. Everything, it should look nice and clean. Make sure you remove the rag. Don't let debris fall in. Okay, once that's done, clean the cover. This cover. Take off the inspection plate. Reseal it now while it's easy. Same thing, I clean the entire cover. There's a gasket that goes here. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is this inspection plate. So this is the way I'm gonna do it. I do a thin layer and cover this entire area here. Okay, make sure you're on the entire area, go over it. Okay, seal your container. And now you don't want to tighten it right away. You want to leave it for just a little bit of time, and you want to clean these babies off. You don't want them to be dirty. So I'm going to clean these up right now. Okay. And now you just put these in like so. I'm gonna come in. Okay, I'm gonna come in now and you guys are gonna clean my cut and then I'll give you your thing, okay?
I'll give you your Band-Aid.
No, I wanna put it on inside. Is that okay?
Okay.
If you want me to. I don't know, do you want me to?
Want to what?
Help me when I get inside?
Help you with what?
With my Band-Aid.
What?
With my Band-Aid.
Okay. I'm just gonna wait here though.
Okay, I'm just gonna tighten this right here. Okay? I don't think that's enough.
How many cuts?
Yes, dear.
Okay, that works.
The torque on this is only like not 8 to 10 newton meters, so just do it by hand. That means that the AC's done running.
Oh, it's not gonna turn for today.
That's right.
You turn on, okay?
No, it's gonna turn on when it gets hot again.
You can turn on.
Okay, so the next procedure is we're going to install the VTC. So there's a specific procedure when you're installing a new VTC. So we're going to get to that right now. So here's our VTC. It is in the unlocked position right now. Because if you can see that this one is in a locked position right here. So that's the lock position with that tab there. This is unlocked. This is the way that you need to tighten this VTC, or you risk the chance of damaging some of the internals. And that is the point that some people at Honda were making, is that technicians were installing these incorrectly by having them locked. I'm not going to move it right now, but this is the unlock position right now. Before you install your bolt, apply oil to it, clean oil. So as you can see, the VTC, I've slid the VTC on. You just wiggle it on until it has these two splines and it just clips onto there. Still unlocked. Grab some oil, lubricate the threads, insert your bolt in here, tighten it as far as you can by hand. So same idea as loosening, except this time we got a torque wrench set to 83 foot-pounds. Reminder, you have your pin in there. So what you want to do is make sure you get your wrench on here, and you want to keep pressure forward as you tighten the okay, that's tightened now. Now we can turn the camshaft and lock it. See how it still moves? Look. So now we want to turn it this way, and now it's locked. So that is how you properly install these, because if you install them in the lock position, you could damage the pin inside, and people have said that that is the reason that these things tend to rattle early after replacing it with a new one, is because people don't do it properly, because there is a trick to not have to remove everything to do this. You can remove the whole camshaft. There's even another trick where you can kind of wiggle it on, but all of those involve tightening it not in the correct position, except for the one we remove the camshaft. But nobody wants to do that because it's a hell of a lot of work. So right now we're gonna put our timing chain back on, and I'll show you how the marks line up. If this chain is stretched, it is very little. As actually you can see, that link is sideways and that one is bent. So like, let's say we push like that, actually then the other side moves. So I think if we make it equal, like that looks equal, I think it's almost identical. I don't think this chain stretched at all. Honda chains aren't even known for stretching. So we're just doing it as installing this new chain as a preventative. Okay, so the way you install this chain is, you have colored links. Okay, those are your top links, and that is your bottom link. So all you're going to do is line up those links at the top, and you're going to line them up at the bottom. And it's pretty easy to do with everything apart like this. You might need to adjust these slightly, or pull this one back to get the chain to get in its spot. And I'll show you why. This back one tends to want to jump. It doesn't really want to stay in the groove. So what we used to do is get a tie strap. Don't lose it in the engine. Get it ready. Well, not tight yet. So we're going to need our wrench. What we want to do is this wants to land in there, but to do that, you have to pull this back. Okay. There it is. Now it jumped off this one. So all we do is pull this back a bit. And there it is in that one. More importantly is getting it down on the bottom in the correct spot. So I'll show you what that looks like now, because once you get the link in place, you can't see anything after. So let's get a light in there. Okay, so you see that dot right there? Well, our link is gonna sit right there. See? Sits inside of that. So first thing we do is gonna get the timing guide on this side. We're gonna put the timing guide on this side, and it's gonna hold the tension on the chain on there. So we're gonna get our new guides ready. Okay, so we just install the guide back on with the 3 10 mils. Let's confirm again that our mark is where it's supposed to be. Oh, it's not. See? It moved. See, look. Our dot is right there. Our dot is right there, and our link's right there. So what we're going to do is, I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to peel that back. When that happens, all we got to do is move this back until our mark lines up. Okay, now that our mark is lined up, as you can see, look, there's our pin. See how it's going on there? Take a look, that's the dot. Our pin goes in there. Okay, once it's in like that, double check it. Okay, what you want to do is, see how there's slack on the chain? Okay, well, with that slack, you want to take it up. You just turn the motor and take up the slack, and there you go. Now the slack is gone off that side, and it's sitting right here again. Okay, and because we have the slack, see how it jumps? So we're gonna have to put our new guide in on the other side. And now we'll install the guide on the other side. Check your marks, make sure everything's still good. So we're gonna install the other guide now. Okay, so let's confirm our marks. Ooh, 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 ooh. It's jumping over here. Hold on. This one has to come this way a bit. Okay, that one's on. That one's on. You see? That one is on. That one is on. I added another tie strap right in between here, just so we can get this on here. Because see how, I'll show you what you have to do. To do this properly, you have to have your timing chain tensioner ready. Your timing chain tensioner has to be ready to alleviate the slack that the belt ends up having. That's why I have the tie strap there right now. So we're only going to be able to put one of these on for now. So watch, we line this up like this. We get this one started. And I'll show you what we're going to do. Get our bolt ready, make sure our bolt's clean and ready to rock. It's like surgery. Okay, so start putting tension on this. And then we're going to cut that we put just temporarily. Okay, everything's still lined up. So right now it's not wanting to go. See, I'm keeping tension on this tensioner, right? So what we're going to do is, see that slack here? We're going to move the slack over. And now our guide's taking up the slack. Okay? Now we're going to grab our bolt and line it up. Which one doing by hand? All right. Okay. So now we can double check our marks again. There we got our mark right there, is right in between our guide pin. Okay. Our arrow up here is all perfect. Our mark here is perfect. Come on there. And then this one as well, right in between. If you follow the arrow, it lines up with that mark, okay? So those are our timing marks. They're all perfect, okay? So once this is the case, we can torque all of our bolts, all our guides, and our tensioners. That's what we're gonna do now. So the guide on this side, the 10 mils, it's 8.7 foot-pounds. And the last one at the bottom. Okay. The guide on the opposite side, the Allen or the hex, is 16 foot-pounds. Okay. Get our torque wrench in here to torque that. Okay. The tensioner is also 8.7 foot-pounds. That's what we're gonna do. One. All right, good. I like to go around with a really small wrench and just double check these, just because it's such a small amount of torque that it's good to just make sure everything's good. Okay, everything's torqued. So the next step is to pull the pin. Pull that pin there. And now we have tension on the thing, and we're gonna do a revolution of the engine and check our time marks, make sure they're all good. Our gold marks won't be in the right place, but our engine should be timed perfectly. We can use that timing mark up there. Our gold mark here should be in the right place, so we're gonna do that right now. Before we do that, of course, you wanna cut this off. So we trust that our engine is timed right now. Of course, we're not starting it yet, so we still have time to make mistakes, but we're not going to make mistakes. We're going to turn the engine over. So our gold marks are all lined up. Everything's good. So let's give this engine a once over until our marks are lined up at the top again. Okay, before we do that, we got to make sure we pull our pins out. So our pins are back here. And to do that, sometimes you have to alleviate the tension from the pin. So you just rock it forward, pull your pin out. Same thing with the back one. Okay. Okay, there's our two pins are out. Now we can rotate the motor. Nothing else holding it. Now we can go in a circle.
Poppy, you come take a break. I'm getting hungry. Me too. Mama said she would make me cook at lunch.
For dinner. Okay, let me just time the engine.
Banana made me one, didn't she? No, no.
Did Nana make you a toast?
No, she didn't have any. Look, this is from behind my ear.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, just give me a couple of minutes, please.
1 minute. Only 1 minute.
Okay. Okay, so we just turned the motor over. As you can see, you want to use the right mark to line it up with the top there. And our lines are perfect. If you come down here, you'll see our arrow is lined up with our arrow. So let's count how many teeth are out on the tensioner. Alright. So we got 1, 2, 3 teeth. Almost, maybe 2 teeth are out. 1, 2, almost 3 teeth. 3 teeth on the tensioner. So definitely the chain was stretched a bit, but not that much. So right now I'm just going to put this back on top of here. And I'm going to take a break, and then we will be installing the cover. And I'll show you where to put all the silicone and everything. I also got the top guide tightened down, 16 foot-pounds as well. And I lubricate all the guides with oil so that it doesn't have a dry start. So now we have the guides tightened, all 3. VTC's tightened. Tensioner's tightened. Spring's been pulled. We've turned the motor over 2 times, and we're still getting everything lined up. And the way you do that, you see that notch? That notch lines up with that arrow at the top, because right now it's in the lock position. Once it's unlocked, it will actually be that arrow because it'll float back the other way. So that's just something to keep an eye on. That's why there's 2 lines. This is where you need to put silicone. So just think about where it's going to go on here. And what I do is I add extra where the cylinder head meets the block. So right there, I put extra on both sides. And this corner and there on both sides. So I add a little extra on those places right before I put the cover on. So we got everything back on. Everything's torqued to spec, which is 8.7 foot-pounds. And then these here are 33 foot-pounds. Make sure you get them all, double check them. And next is I remove the tensioner and the idler because I will be replacing them, but I'm also going to be inspecting this cover. This is the VTC gasket. We're going to take a look at it and clean it out. So here's our VTC filter. So the oil comes in through there, goes through the filter screen, and then goes up to the head. So if you can see, there's the hole, goes in, comes to the filter screen. So what we're gonna do is I just blew it all out, cleaned it, and I'm gonna apply a little bit of silicone to this gasket, put it back on here. So there we go. I applied a thin layer of gasket maker here just to reuse the seal, even though look, it is a little raised, so we're good. So we're gonna reapply this back on there. Make sure you clean that surface. And this will be one more preventative measure. One more preventative measure. Okay, so I'm only going to show you how to do one, and then you can figure out how to do the rest. But look, we can't fit in here. It's too tight. So definitely needs a valve adjustment. So we're going to go with 0.23 on the intake side. So the first thing we're going to do is loosen up the... Doesn't fit in there. So we're going to say 23 with drag for number 1. And then we're going to do the next one. And then we're going to do the back, which are the exhausts. Those have a different measurement, which is 25 to 29. And then I'll show you what you do. You go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, okay? After you're done with cylinder number 1, you're going to rotate the crankshaft until the cam sprocket faces over here. The arrow faces here. And now you're adjusting number 3 cylinder. So just keep repeating the process. Okay, so I completed the rest of the cylinder. So it goes 1, 3, 4, 2, and then when you spin it back to top dead center, we can line up the motor up. We'll show you that right now. Okay, the engine's back at top dead center. Our marks are lined up. The bottom's lined up. I don't have the pulley on, but I'll confirm after. The next step is to clean this mating surface up. Apply silicone in those corners there. Right there. There. And there. And then you can put the valve cover gasket on. Just gotta clean up the cover and replace the gasket on it, and it'll be ready to go on. That's where you put the silicone. New gasket on, and then lubricate these tubes with oil, and then just put it back on top. Okay, the valve cover's on. I would tighten these bolts with a really small ratchet because I've had them be torqued to spec and then crack the nut. So just be careful. Next, we're going to put the spark plugs back on, reattach these, and then continue. Everything's back on. The nut in the back, the harness tightened down. Now we're just going to put the cover back on. Everything's done on the vehicle, so we're just waiting for the tensioner, the idler, belt, and a new harmonic balancer, and then we will crank the vehicle over by hand to build up some oil pressure, or we might actually disconnect the fuel pump and just have the engine turn over a bunch of times to make sure it's still good, and then we'll start it because we just want to make sure we build up enough oil pressure in all the areas before, because we've been draining it and we took a lot of parts apart. Okay, so for now this is it, and the next time you see the video we'll have all the parts. Now that a few hours have passed since the side cover has sealed, as you can see, look, we got really good penetration coming through. That's what you want to see. Hold on. That's what you want to see. You want to see it coming out the sides all the way down. So we got good penetration on that, and everything's tight. We did a valve adjustment. Hopefully everything's good there. I put the engine mount because I need my jack for tomorrow, but we're just waiting on some parts. But before that, we're gonna put some oil because we do not want to forget to put oil in this car. So that's what I'm gonna do now. 4.5 liters, and then once we start it, we'll check it. All right, some parts came in. So a new tensioner, new idler. The tensioner obviously comes with a new pulley. My belt didn't come in, and my crank pulley that came in was damaged, so I just put the old one back on. I removed the injector connectors. There's oil in it, so we're just gonna crank it over to build up some fuel pressure before we actually start it up for the first time. So we're just gonna give it a good crank to build up oil pressure. Make sure the engine's okay with our timing. Okay, sounds okay. Let's reconnect our, let's check our oil. Reconnect our connectors now. We should have built up enough oil pressure. Okay. The car should just start up now without issue. Hopefully, let's cross our finger. She sounds good. It's funny, no matter how many times you take apart an engine, I'm always nervous when I first start it, always. So now we can lift up the garage a bit so we don't smoke ourselves out of here. And that's just from some of the oil that I had spilled earlier, that spilled on the exhaust. You take a look there, there's still a little oil. It's just burning off. Make sure all your connectors are connected. Make sure your ground is connected. Right underneath there. There's not that many connectors that come apart during the process. Now we just gotta watch and make sure our cover is sealed, which I believe it is. Okay, I undercoated the car. So I just gotta put these inner fender liners back on. I'm waiting on a new fender liner for this side. A new fender liner is going to go on this side because this one was ripped, but same thing, I undercoated the vehicle. Oh, spots, these are your drains for water, so always make sure those are cleared out. But yeah, everything looks good here. I can put the inner fender back on. I'm just waiting for it to come in, hopefully tomorrow. But other than that, engine starts and runs good.